This is the small street off the square that has the two different Inca walls, one on either side. This is the entrance to the Parque de Cultura. There are two art museums here, Italiano and I think the Museum of Lima. And I'm just starting my trek down to Miraflores and ultimately to have lunch on the ocean at Nautical Rose. They sure look like those geese from the Arctic. This is a little makeshift aviary with what look like parakeets, maybe some small parrots. Another lovely pool with some dinosaurs. Right next to, and what I think is probably a bullfighting ring or some kind of, maybe it even includes soccer, I don't know. It's interesting, they've either by design or by frustration decided to paint the rocks imaginative characters, like with this monkey using somewhat the shape and the topography, if you will, of the monkey to simulate the character itself. But this is kind of pretty. Looks like it was designed to have more water in it. That's a nice idea. So this is the inside of that arena, and it's actually a theater. Here a herd of some kind of bird enjoying those rose-colored flowers. A whimsical character outside of what I think is another theater. And this is a very grand and majestic looking square, fountain. Originally designed for people to sit all around it, but that was decided not a good idea. A very pretty fountain, one of the prettiest I've ever seen. It's a very delicate use of water. Nothing flamboyant. Wish I knew what the historical illusion was. The Chinese influence, no doubt, contributes greatly to the tranquility in the use of water and the subtlety in the design. This is one of the few places where there isn't the palpable fear that I feel elsewhere in Lima, except for Plaza de Armas and the area around that. There are some majestic buildings in Lima. It's just, if they're not close to the plaza, you don't want to run the risk of getting out of the cab to look at them. This is the National Museum of Lima. And thank God for parks, or some cities would just sink into gray, dismal This is an interesting building. It looks European in design, except for that bottom portion I don't recognize. Nice little building right on the corner of Arequipa. This is Avenida Arequipa, which is in the process of being redone. There are some pretty old buildings that have been at least painted, and that's kind of encouraging. Otherwise, the street is just packed with buses, foul buses. Everything done by hand. And on the other side, a couple of three buildings that have been somewhat painted recently, but will add to the character at some point in time, hopefully. Another pretty park that's closed to the public, even though they're working on it, perhaps to give it a chance to grow back. Maybe it's part of the project of restoring this entire street. The hope being if they once fix it up so it's really pretty and then try to maintain it with force, it might stay that way. This little park just off from Avenida Arequipa is, believe it or not, dedicated to, you won't believe it, even though it's messed up, George Washington. Now, what George had to do with Peru back in those days is fascinating. Okay, I'm wandering. I'm now down in San Isidro, so I'm getting closer where I'm trying to get. There is a sign which is Avenida Conquistadores, which I'll go left to. Okay, where you see the X there is where I am at Conquistadores, and I'll go down here like this until I hit that Ovalo Gutierrez, which is right there. Then I'm going to angle through this park, and I may do it earlier than that. And then I'm going to cut myself across here till I get to this street right here, I think, and then I'll take a taxi down, or maybe I'll do it earlier. I've just left that little restaurant, which is a real shift since cone gas costs $5.50 instead of $1, and the chocolate was fantastic. And now I'm walking along this way, which must be near a hospital or an old folks place, because I see people in wheelchairs. It's very pretty, so we'll see where I end up, since I'm now kind of lost. Whatever it is, it's very pretty and very non-typical of Lima. And it goes on for quite a distance, as I'm about to discover. Paseo Padre Constancio Solar. An amazingly tranquil place compared to what I'm used to seeing in Lima. The kind of place that makes you think if you did have to retire to a wheelchair and you liked this area, this would be the place to be, somewhere near here. This is what travel's all about, really. This morning I start off near the Plaza de Armas in Lima, which is safe enough. Travel by cab through a place that isn't safe enough to walk through. Get to another park that's pretty safe. Walk down a street that's fine, but typical dirty, smog-infested vehicle Lima. Get stopped by a cop for shooting my video, and then in order to talk English, approached by a very suave, tall, young intelligent, well-educated, speaks English, higher level policeman in a plain clothes suit and very nicely dressed, inquiring very carefully about why I'm in the security area in the first place, shooting videos. And now I'm in this very tranquil place after having been in a very expensive restaurant. That's what it's all about, the contrasts, the things you don't expect. And here comes a phalanx of 3 or 4 old folks being pushed in wheelchairs. I'm now leaving this place, which I think is probably surrounded by expensive apartments and probably old folks' rest homes, because most of the people that I see in the wheelchairs are almost incapable of cognizance and don't even notice when I say hello. Outside this Lima Hotel, an interesting piece of architecture, art. Entonces?
Huaca Pucllana.
Huaca Pucllana. This is some original adobe work, but what you will see in a moment is fantástico. This is all made out of adobe. It is seismic proof for earthquakes. Tremolo? And all of that is made out of adobe. So I'm going to, now if I understood his Spanish correctly, while the site is closed, if I walk around the other side, which I'm now in the process of doing, there's a restaurant I can go into, and in the restaurant gives me access to it somehow. I don't know where the restaurant is, but since I'm not sure what's going to happen, I'll do it now. This is what I can see, probably restored with my telephoto. But this is amazing to think it was all done with those little adobe bricks. Talk about people using the resources that they have to construct their monuments. Wow. Don't know whether this is restored or original. I'm guessing from the mud caps that it's at least restored as to that protection if the bricks beneath it were original. And I don't know whether these different terraces were steps, original, or just what was restored. Incidentally, this structure is 1200 years old, so 800 AD and pre-Inca. Another view of a platform probably restored. Now up here I see a lot of just plain what we would call pit run rocks, and my guess is that they surfaced this giant area with the adobe bricks, but probably either built it on top of an existing hill or filled it in with this kind of rock. Pretty tree. Yeah, I'm back where I was when I first discovered this place, so I'm guessing I missed the restaurant and I'm not going to look for it. Here you can at least get an idea of the depth into the hill of this adobe. And there again you can see that inner part of the hill that's filled with just rock and other pit run stuff, and then the rest of the adobe. Another pretty tree. Okay, I've taken a taxi down to where this restaurant is, and the big giant guards scrutinizing me for a bit. Everything is scrutinized. Suspicion is absolutely rampant in Peru, at least in Lima. Probably the hotels on those bluffs service a great many American and European tourists. This is the access to the restaurant, which is Nautica Rose. It was recommended to me by two Japanese people young people from Vancouver. And my guess is everything out here is very expensive for the tourists. I finally learned how to eat the shrimp that has the tail on it with some finesse. Now I have to deal with this shrimp with the tail on it with these giant covering of noodle whiskers. One of the most interesting little ovens. This part of the square is kind of pretty at night because the lights going up the hills almost look like stars. Like Christmas or something. Slow nighttime pan of Plaza de Armas. This is nighttime pan of Plaza de Armas. This is the presidential palace. Over in there, I think, is the statue of Pizarro, but I can't find it. Other sundry buildings. And La Catedral. The palace.